Wherever there are shadows, there are people ready to kick at the darkness until it bleeds daylight. This is Bleeding Daylight with your host, Rodney Olson.
Welcome to Bleeding Daylight. Thanks for being here. Hundreds more episodes are waiting for you at bleedingdaylight.net. Please follow Bleeding Daylight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok and YouTube. What parts of our life story so far are still writing the script for the days ahead? Are we letting past pain dictate where we're heading, our actions, our emotions, our relationships? Can we take an inventory of where we are now to help us move to where we were created to be? Today's guest has done the hard work dealing with past trauma and has changed the trajectory of the future for himself and those around him. My guest today has walked through the shattering of 2 marriages, years of chasing success and self, and come out the other side with a story of real redemption. Matthew Wingo left corporate America to pour his life into ministering to men on the path to healing and freedom. He's the founder of Turnright Ministry, a men's 12-step leader, worship guitarist, and the author of Turnright, The Pursuit of Noble Things, a book that's every bit his own story, as it is an invitation to walk in grace and conviction. Today, he's sharing that story with raw honesty, and I know it's going to speak straight into the lives of so many people. Matthew, welcome to Bleeding Daylight.
Thank you, Roddy. Excited to be here.
I know that you're very keen to talk about the road to recovery for those that you serve, but I'm wondering if you can give me an idea of the kind of man you were. What were your earliest years like?
My earliest years, I think the best word for me is untamed. If you want to talk a specific word, my grew up in a very high-performance family, and excellence was the norm and the expectation. For me, saying can't and don't, those were actually challenges to accept, never advice or rules to follow for me. The rules could apply to everybody else, but not me. And that was definitely my wiring. I didn't approach anything in half measures. I was all in or all out, which is a great disposition to have when it's used and pointed in the right direction. But you point that in the wrong direction. Well, that's one reason I have a story and I'm here today.
That idea of a young life of performance, was that handed down through the family? Was there that expectation as you were growing up that you were here to perform and everything had to look shiny and new on the outside?
Absolutely. And I think that was cultural for having, a family that's been successful and hardworking. There was that expectation to carry yourself in accordance with what the world saw. As I get into in the book, that actually goes into some of the internalization that I struggled with of, hey, wear a smile for the world, but on the inside, there can be challenges. Let's just keep moving forward. Let's focus on the goal. Let's keep moving forward and not necessarily address what's going on the inside as much.
We know that there are times that we all need to just show up and we need to present ourselves well, but we also know that we need to be dealing with what's going on internally. So you were never handed the tools of dealing with that? Was that just brushed under the carpet? Was that the way that things ran within your family, within your community?
Here and there were points of correction. My dad was a big hero of mine and would speak truth into me. But as I mentioned before, I was not one to take advice from others. Even as a young kid, I thought I knew better, kind of outsmart the room and work my way through situations, figure it out on my own. So I think I was very independent in that way. But it took me a long time to recognize the value of being vulnerable, actually being willing to open up and say, hey, I don't have this all figured out. I need help. And that kind of led to my story of coming to Christ. It led to the way that I carried some of the sanctification process, becoming more Christ-like after my salvation, but also maintaining a lot of stuff internally that I just would never address. Bury it, busy myself with success. You mentioned the corporate environment. Hard driving, getting the mission done, that's very celebrated in a lot of corporate environments. And I leaned into that heavily and was able to focus on that. Even if other things weren't going so well, I was always to lean on and leverage that success that I was experiencing.
Let's jump forward then. You did touch on your conversion. How did that come about? How did you, first of all, come to know who Jesus was?
I always believed in God. I knew who Jesus was through the church. I grew up in the church. That was never a foreign concept to me or a new concept to me. And while I believed that, I had never come to a point that I'd actually made it a personal relationship in and of myself. And when I was 17, the Lord, through a series of events, led me to a week-long kind of summer camp for some people I knew that were in a church youth group in my hometown. I noticed over the course of the week, they knew all the same head knowledge that I had about the Bible and who Jesus was. And I believed all of those things. But what is this that they've got? They've got this joy and this peace, and there's something they have that I don't have. And over the course of the week, I'm like, I want that. I don't know what this is that the rest of this group has, but I don't have that, and I want it. And it kind of came to a culmination. Our final night, we had a chapel night. And the Lord just made it so clear to me that what you don't have is me, a personal relationship with me. I had all the head knowledge, but it hadn't yet gone into the heart and soul where I said, I need to surrender my life to Christ. And so I was 17 years old after a lifetime of growing up in the church that it truly became a personal decision and a personal conviction for me that I need Christ, and I'm going to surrender and admit that I am a sinner.
We would love to think that that is almost the end of the story, that you've come to Christ and everything is wonderful after that. But we know that that's not how real life works. So where did your faith go from that point?
It's kind of an interesting dichotomy for me that I still pursued Christ. I loved knowledge. I loved learning about the Bible and going deep. I loved sermons, very involved in all types of service with my churches that I was involved with. Really poured deep into that. And yet I equate it almost to if I have a handful of rocks that I'm supposed to surrender all of them to the Lord. He's saying, hey, give me all of those. I'm like, well, here, Lord. And I'm handing him the ones or twos. But these parts of my life, I'm gonna hold back over here, Lord. I think I can do these. I think I can handle this one on my own. That carried forward into so many things. It was the parts of my life I had not yet realized I needed to surrender, and maybe in some ways refused to, whether willingly or unknowingly, not giving everything over to the Lord. Obedience was a big point of keeping to myself. I knew what should be done, what shouldn't be done in most cases, right? How to act. But there were parts of me I said, you know what, I feel like doing that, so I'm going to do it anyway. And that led to, I wouldn't say blatant strongholds and sins so much as it led to a pattern that over time grew roots that came out. And that's a lot of my story, my testimony of where I am today. It was when I finally got to that point, I realized I need to surrender everything, not hold back a few things to myself, not keep things from Christ, but say, you know what, Jesus, here I am. I lay it all at your feet. You can have it all. Whatever comes next, you can have it all. I give it up. And obedience was a big word he tried to, I think, put on my heart for years that I just, in myself, in my own flesh, it was something I refused to give to him. Like I said, sometimes knowingly and sometimes just being stubborn in it, and sometimes probably just foolishly being ignorant to the fact that I was not surrendering a part of my life to Christ.
We can delve deep into the scriptures. We can learn who Jesus is. We can come to know him. We can seek to hand over those rocks that we should and start to follow that path of obedience. But oftentimes there are other people in our life that can knock that off kilter as well. And I know that in your first marriage, there was a moment when everything changed. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Absolutely. So 10 years into marriage and 2 small children, I learned some hard truths about my spouse dating back to the very beginning of the marriage, soon after the honeymoon. That betrayal, learning those truths, it really kind of shattered me. And while I was temporarily broken, I had learned back to my upbringing how to put that in a shell very quickly, bury it, and pretend that there was nothing wrong there. For me, the ability to keep the smile on, keep this happy, successful facade on the front side that everybody saw, hey, the face looks great. On the inside, it was tearing me up on the inside. But I refused to seek help. I didn't think I needed help from professionals. Very few people actually knew anything that I was walking through. And so I spent better part of 10 years after learning those truths trying to do it in my own power. eventually the seeds planted yield the harvest. Those seeds grew into a very big orchard. I call it the hidden orchard. I had a very hidden orchard that I watered in the dark, and bad things grow in the dark instead of getting it out in the light. And I see on this side of it, wow, if I just sought some help, if I just gone to someone and said, I'm really struggling here, can you help me? What a difference that could have made potentially, and changed my outlook, made me a person of healing. That yes, this has been a hard thing to walk through, but you know what? I've come out of it stronger on the other side.
We hear often from people that shame is very much the thing that keeps those things hidden, that we have this idea of shame that if this came out, then it's all over for me, that people are not going to think of me in the same way. And yet I hear from those same people that when they have overcome that, when they've come to the point of, well, I might feel ashamed, but I've got to do something, that they find there's freedom in that. Did you find that when you finally said, I need to reach out, I need some help, that there was freedom rather than shame in that act?
That's such a great point. And I absolutely did find that freedom. You hear the secrets keep us sick type thing. And we hear that, yet I don't know that we always believe it as people, right? We go, oh, I've got this. And there is a lot of shame. A fear of failure was one of my driving factors, I think. If I knew something was unlikely to be successful, I would just avoid doing it. To admit my marriage was failing or struggling would be to admit failure in it, and maybe there's something wrong with me. I didn't want to allow that in my space. I didn't want to even allow those thoughts. But being able to get to a point, and it took me going through quite a season, a prodigal season, and ending up in a recovery program to address that, where the light bulb went off. The recovery program, I like to equate it to, if you remember the old connect the dots pictures. You start at 1, you go to 2, you go to 3. You don't know what you're drawing at first, but by the time you get to point number 60 or 70 on the page, you suddenly have a picture of what you're looking at. And that's exactly what the recovery program did for me. It was like all these seemingly isolated things going on, all connected back to a complete picture of where it was. And I think that's what ultimately led to my complete surrender to Christ. I was already saved. My salvation was secure, but I was struggling in the sanctification and releasing control.
I know that there came a time as part of that recovery where you sat down with someone expecting perhaps accusation or to be made to feel small, and yet they listened without judgment, and that was a powerful link in that chain, wasn't it?
You're so correct. In our 12-step recovery program there's actually my mentor. I remember the first time, there's a step in the program that's one of the longest steps, but it's called inventory. It's a personal inventory, and we walk through all the harms we've caused to others, all the harms to us. Basically an inventory of what's been wrong in our life, what's gone bad either to us, by us, and the sins we have. There were things I had never shared with anybody. I'm like putting these in a workbook going, I can't believe I'm writing this down, and admitting to myself for the first time. But to go into the next step, which is confession. A gentleman named Mark, just such a great godly man I really looked up to as my mentor. And I remember sitting down, he's across a booth from me at a little restaurant. I'm walking through this, and he's just smiling at me the whole time with this look on his face, like, it's okay. And he's smiling, and it was so encouraging. And I had a few tears as I'm getting some of these things out, things I had never admitted publicly. I'm just sharing some details with him, and he's just smiling at me the whole time. He's like, Jesus loves you. Thank you for sharing this with me. And he was so encouraging the whole time. It really makes the scripture of Romans 8:1, therefore there is now no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. And to be able to sit across the table from someone that's heard the most detail that anybody's ever heard in my life about the things I had done, and yet he's sitting there not condemning me. It's like, wow, that's what Jesus is doing too. That's what the Father's doing. There's no condemnation in that. And it's such a beautiful, wonderful thing, and complete freedom in that.
When we put a shiny veneer on our lives and we present ourselves well with that smile, we can actually start to believe our own press and start to believe that's the person I am. And I'm not broken enough to be part of something like a 12-step program that's for people who are addicted to substances or alcohol or whatever it might be, but it's not for me. How do we get ourselves over that point and realize that it can be a range of things that bring us to that sort of recovery program and that there is freedom on the other side?
We have a list at the recovery program I was a part of and am still a leader with of 101 things that could be potential struggles. And it's literally a page just full of things that could be struggles for you. I don't know a single person that's come in there that hasn't circled many of those things on there. It could be pride, it could be anger, it could be so many different things. There are people that suffer through different addictions of all types and histories of abuse and different things. And there were a lot of those I didn't have. And yet, pride. I was very prideful in myself. I had a fear of failure. I was very discontent. The Lord would give me blessings. I could get a promotion at work. I'm like, this is awesome. And within a month, I'm already looking for the next promotion because I'm like, okay, how do I get the next one? And it's never even enjoying where I'm at in the moment. So discontentment could be a big one. You get a blessing and you're not thankful and grateful for it. There's so many different things in there. For me personally, the Lord just prompted me one Sunday to go to Regen. And it was somebody saying, hey, we're starting a new semester of regeneration, and that's the recovery ministry I was part of. I was like, okay, Lord, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. The Lord always has the perfect sense of timing because 5 days later, my second marriage ended abruptly one night. It was just over, like in an instant. My second marriage was over. I was shell-shocked. I didn't know what to do. And I remember the Lord saying, go to Regen, go to Regen. And I was like, I don't know what to do. So the following week, I literally walked into this recovery ministry the first time, didn't know why I was there, didn't know what my major issue was. I'm like, well, Lord, you said go to Regen. I'm going to walk into Regen. And each week was a self-discovery of what strongholds were in my life, what sins were in my life, what was causing me to have these patterns of destruction along with some success. And looking at that, I was able to put that pattern together, as I previously mentioned, but it's really a step of obedience, which has remained a big word for me. It's just obedience. Just be obedient to me. You know my word, now live up and follow my word.
I imagine that when people come to Regen for the first time and they're given that list of all sorts of things that could be holding them back, that there'd be some that they would immediately circle and others that they would probably look at and say, hey, I didn't realize that was a problem. I can see that in me. I didn't realize that was going to be holding me back. Are there surprises like that for people when they start to realize that this is a pattern that I've built up and I feel that it's normal and yet actually it's something that is getting in the way of my relationship with Jesus?
Absolutely. And I would say without fail, even the person that knows exactly why they're there, say alcohol is their struggle or a drug or pornography, whatever their struggle is when they walk in that door, that may be the big one they circle. But to get them in a group of like-minded men, we break up men and women in the group. So obviously I'm associated with the men's groups. But to look around that and see the men that walk in January and the men that are commencing in late November from that program, completely different men. They started in January going, well, this is my issue. And that list grows of things they could circle, the knowledge and skills they've learned of how to deal with those and the way they can overcome that in the future. It gives them points and skills to say, hey, I don't have to be subject to this any longer. I can be free from this. I can find freedom from this. And the things they didn't even know were there, they're now addressing and finding freedom from them before they can cause more damage in their lives.
People like to be done with things. We like to be able to go through a course or whatever it might be and say, I now have those skills and I need to move on. But I would suggest that recovery or this growing relationship with Jesus is still a step-by-step process. So what are the steps that you're still seeing yourself walk through in your desire to know Jesus better?
The best image of that is, and you don't always realize it before going through a program like that, but to pick up your cross daily and follow him. That is to die to ourselves each and every day. We basically have to walk that hill of Calvary every day, allow ourselves to be crucified in the flesh daily to be able to walk in the Spirit. That's such a powerful reminder. It's never a finished work. This side of heaven, we're never a finished work. We can grow, we can become more Christ-like, but we're never done. And I think that's one of the things I learned and realized in there is there's no finish line. And in becoming more Christ-like, there's really no finish line until we're complete in our sanctification. To understand that's hard work, and that's daily choosing to be a person of noble character, be a person of Christ-likeness, taking every thought captive, as the Apostle Paul tells us, take every thought captive, making sure that even our internal dialogue is it consistent with the person I'm trying to become. One of the quotes I put in there is, character is refined in the crucible of consistency. And it's that consistency that allows us to overcome that daily. Yes, you can have all the tools, but if we don't practice that, a gym membership does not imply you're going to get in shape just because you pay a monthly fee to a gym membership. And it's the same thing. It's the consistency. You eat one healthy meal. That's not the same as eating 1,000 healthy meals, right? And it's the consistency of doing the right things over and over and over, that you can look back behind you and say, you know what, I'm different than I was 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. It's because you choose daily to get up and do the right thing in that moment, in that one decision in front of you. Do the right thing right here, right now, and do it consistently.
We know the good news of the gospel is that the past can be over. Our past doesn't have to determine the direction we go into the future with. But we also know that past actions can still cause consequences. How do we start to deal with the consequences of past actions, even when we're finding ourselves becoming more whole in Jesus? How do we deal with the leftovers, I guess, of that previous life that we're walking out of?
Wow, what a world it would be if we could just erase the the consequences of our decisions of yesterday, right? Absolutely. That's a ongoing challenge. And I'd say in some cases, it's not always done. My decisions of yesterday left scars that remain both in me and my family through a divorce process. Obviously, I was hurt along the way. Other people were hurt along the way. That leaves scars. That leaves memories. That leaves things that the people involved have to work to overcome. It can leave that, but there's also a beauty in coming out the other side when you see that there's grace and forgiveness, to make amends with someone, to sit down with my ex-wife, who's remarried now, by the way, and I get along great with she and her husband. We actually made amends. The ability to sit down and say, this is what I can own in my part of it. This is what I did wrong, and take ownership for my actions. And to sit down with my 2 children, who are both now adults, and say, you know what? I didn't do it right. I messed up. I know that hurt you, and I know that changed trajectory of your life and what you were doing in that moment. And I'm sorry. You make amends now. And it's been a very sweet process. It's not always easy. Sometimes those hurts and those feelings come up. Forgiveness isn't a one-time event most of the time. It's an ongoing daily decision that I choose to forgive this person. And you might have to do it multiple times a day. But it's been such a sweet process to see how the Lord has shaped me through the humility. And I think that's a big thing in reconnecting and amends, is walking in humility and just own your part in it. Even if you're 10% for fault, own that fault as much as you can, as if that's your 100%. Even if you're just 10% of the problem, that's your 100%, and own all of that. Give it to Jesus, surrender it, and be humble in that.
We've touched on your book a couple of times, Turnright, The Pursuit of Noble Things. At what point along that process did you decide, I need to put this story down, I need to provide a way for others to find the freedom that I've found?
The book's an interesting process, how it came together. I had a great career in corporate America. I've been blessed to work internationally quite a bit and do some amazing things. I always loved connecting with people along the way. I learned a lot of lessons about dealing with people, interacting with people. And I had a lot of, I'd say, managers that maybe don't qualify as leaders, and, managers that were amazing leaders that made a big impact on me. So I would start collecting notes of that. What do I like in business? What's working? What's not working? Kind of in parallel, I was making notes for my daily quiet times, my studies of the Bible, listening to different podcasts, reading books. I'd make notes on that. And I started thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could put all this together in a book? It was never the right time. I would sit down to write, and I've always had the ability to write when I needed to write something, and I had severe writer's block every time. And I feel like the Lord was just a little nudge, like, it's not time. It's not time. through this process, he has taken me through some things that I don't think I ever could have done in terms of putting the book as it is today out there. If he had not taken me through a Job season plus, that I go through a bit of all that's happened over the last 4 years in my life, it's a very beautiful thing that I walk through it, because I wouldn't be able to have this story to share with the world and put out there. And in the writing of it, I first had this idea, I'm going to make it this very academic book and show knowledge. And, it was like Turnright, the relentless pursuit of God and a call to higher living. And I was like, oh, that's a great title. I was like, what? That's not what this is about. That's not what, and the Lord really pressed on me Paul's words in Romans 15:18, where Paul says, I will venture to speak of nothing but what Christ has accomplished through me. And that hit me so hard. And I felt the Lord telling me, this isn't a book about you. This is what I've done for you. And I'm like, wow, I get to give him the glory, because yes, I have the experiences that are outlined in the book, but ultimately it's his story. And to be able to share that was such a humbling thing. And crazy enough, when I got to that point, it was actually a year ago this month that the Lord said, write. He gave me one word, write. And I'd been trying to write stuff for months off and on, and just nothing could happen. I was done with the book in 60 days after he told me to write. It just all flowed together, and it was amazing. I just needed him to say, it's time to go, like, write. It all came together. And like, Lord, I could not have put this together had you not put me through these things and used even my own bad decisions and my prodigal periods of time. He used those to put this story together. My hope in it is that it shines a light on him and says, yes, this is available to everybody. This healing, this grace, this forgiveness, and this new life is available to everybody. That's my main point, is challenge people to be people of noble character, especially men. Challenge men to be men of noble character. But let's put a spotlight on Christ, because at the end of the day, that's what matters.
As you were writing the book, and obviously thinking back to some of those earlier periods in your life, I imagine that there were some times that you recognized, oh, that really hurt me and it really hurt others around me. But was there also those moments of surprise of, hey, this is back where I was and this is where Jesus has brought me now?
Absolutely. I think of some of the stories I share in the book. I know my mindset in that day when I'm sharing the story of, even the Turnright name in the title of the book comes from a very specific event where I ignored the prompting of the Holy Spirit. I look at that now going, wow, the man that ignored that is not the same man that's writing this or sitting here rereading it now. I'm totally different. And I can look back, because this covers essentially a 20 to 30 year period of my life, that I'm definitely not the same man that started this story, is not the man that's here today. And that's a testament to the work of Christ in me. It is hard to read some things. Some things still bring a tear to my eye to read certain chapters and go, yeah, I would never choose that today, but I chose that then. And again, what I might have intended for bad or self-glorification in that moment, the Lord, I think, is turning into something good that hopefully can inspire others and give them some sense of hope.
I imagine there's a couple of different kinds of people that may be listening at the moment. There are those who say, my life is not that broken that I need to be part of a recovery program or to get help for people to walk alongside me in my journey towards Jesus. I'm not that broken. But there are probably others who say, you know what, I'm too broken. I've gone too far. I don't think there's a way back. Is there a common message that you would give to both those camps?
I would say that it's necessary for everyone to do a self-inventory and do a hard look in the mirror, because if any of us say we're without sin or without faults or things to improve, that's not true. That's untrue, right? And that's scriptural, that we all sin, we all fall short, especially to the person that feels too broken, too far from God. The Lord would never forgive me for the things I've done. There's no condemnation when you come to Christ, and he can forgive that. And I've seen women walk in that are so broken, thinking, the things I've done, if you just knew, you wouldn't even want me in this building. And you know what? They're welcomed in. I said, hey, come on in, because the invitation's for everybody, right? It's all nations, all people. The invitation is there to come before the throne of grace. and no one is ever too far gone. So to that group, I would say there's no such thing as too far in the Lord, right? Grace and healing is available to everybody. And it does take courage to say, you know what, I need that. And I would say even for the person that doesn't think they need discipleship, mentors, or fellowship with other believers that can iron sharpen iron together, that would be kind of prideful for us to think that we don't have anything we need to address or anything that's happened in our past. We all have areas we can grow in. And I would say it takes courage to have a great life and figure that nothing's going wrong, so why do I need this type of program? Why do I need to pursue Christ? Why do I need to do an inventory and grow my character? There are things there, and it takes courage to look in that mirror and say, you know what? Yes, I know it's there. I'm willing to stand and face it. I'm going to face that chilling wind blowing on me, and I'm going to face it, and I'm going to do the hard stuff. And it doesn't have to be the same type of recovery program I did. I mean, in some ways, it's very much a discipleship program because it points people to Christ. That's the bedrock and foundation of the entire program is, hey, yes, your life can be renewed and different, but it takes Christ doing that for you because we're powerless in and of ourselves to change ourselves.
Matthew, I do have links in the show notes at bleedingdaylight.net so that people can find you easily and get themselves a copy of Turnright, The Pursuit of Noble Things. I just want to thank you for what you're doing in other men's lives. Thank you for what you've allowed Jesus to do in your own. And thank you very much for spending some time with us today on Bleeding Daylight.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to Bleeding Daylight. Please help us to shine more light into the darkness by sharing this episode with others. For further details and more episodes, please visit bleedingdaylight.net.